Why is it so important, and why does the world need Dharma at this point in time? And not just in general, but like particularly now, with so much happening in the world, where it feels like we're being pulled apart. And Dharma is a principle that actually unites and brings people together. So something is not quite doing what Dharma does in this world. So we wanted to dive a little deep as to how Dharma actually unites people and brings about peace and harmony, and how the world actually needs this more. So in the yoga tradition, we learn this philosophy of Dharma as the most powerful, binding, and unifying factor. And the ultimate equality is actually experienced and received when we actually practice Dharma. Because in the world today, we fight for equality. We all want to be equals, but somehow it's not going to work, because the lens that we look at the world with and our relationships with is a very subjective lens. And because of this subjective lens, there is no sense of uh, unity and equality. So therefore, Dharma is the tool that actually helps to unify our consciousness so that we can truly practice equality. So, as we've been discussing, Dharma is the intrinsic nature of the soul. And the nature of the soul, by design of the Creator, that it is loving. And it always seeks love and wants to share love with others. So that is by design, the Creator's design. That's how we are meant to be. So now if we don't operate according to the design, what happens? There's going to be some chaos. If you get a manual to use your car and you do not use the manual, the probability of you having a great experience, a full experience with your car, doesn't matter how expensive it is, it's going to be somewhat compromised. So the world that we live in is heavily compromised by components that are going in the opposite direction of Dharma. And so that's why we want to discuss just 4 points on why we need Dharma in this world. Because Dharma creates the principles of Dharma, the energy of Dharma, the practice of Dharma creates order in chaos. Chaos is created by our sensory engagement with the objects of the senses. For example, you have taste. Now, the taste has a unique dharma, has a unique purpose. But if we go around and allow our mind to dictate what kind of taste and varieties of taste we need to have, then there may be other living entities' life in jeopardy, because we need to taste. We need to taste the best beef from Ireland or from Scotland, because it grows in such and such environments. So what happens? Because our taste is not operating according to Dharma, the principle of Dharma, then what's happening is that it's going to cause harm to other beings. At what expense? Similarly, all our sensory faculties will engage with the objects of the senses, the sense of sight. You may already know that the porn industry is one of the biggest industries in the world. The sex industry, the porn industry is the biggest in the world. I remember reading an article. It explains, especially during COVID, it just like, whew, 300% profits. Because the dharma of the eyes, the sight, the dharma of the sight is not regulated by the self, is not operating according to the principles of dharma. So what happens? We let it go all over the place. The music that we listen to, there is a unique dharma for the sense of hearing. So what happens? When that is not properly operating with the principle of dharma, then we'll listen to things that are so harsh and so disturbing that it'll throw you off. And as we've been discussing, sound moves consciousness. Time moves matter and sound moves consciousness. So our consciousness is getting altered continuously by what we hear and our sense of touch. So, and our sense of smell. I mean, the perfume industry, imagine the world that is governing our day-to-day operations is primarily focused on these five sensory faculties: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. And they create businesses just so that you can become a commodity. Because we are not operating with the principles of Dharma. So that's why all of the sensory faculties, they have to be recognized, they have to be understood what its function and what is its Dharma. And so when it is not operating to the principles of Dharma, then there is complete chaos. So in other words, Dharma is the spine or the structure of this universe or the structure of our lives. If you do not have proper spine, you will not be able to operate properly. So this is what Dharma is. And this is why Dharma is needed for the world, the inner world and the outer world that we live in, to have order, because otherwise it becomes chaotic. And the second principle I wanted to discuss is how it aligns with our nature. So everyone has certain nature. We think that nature is outside, but nature is also inside. And we all have certain natures. And it aligns with our nature. I will give you an example, like fish. When fish is in the water, then it's in its element, it's in its dharma. What happens? The fish is happy. And the minute you take the fish out of the water, what happens? The fish is not happy. I mean, I watched, like yesterday, we were just talking over breakfast. I was sharing the story of this Valmiki the hunter from the Ramayana, and how he used to break the legs of the animals and keep them around his cottage so he could feed his family later on. I mean, it was so painful, and it disturbed many of us. I was walking in Stone Mountain Park, and I was watching people. I wasn't watching, but I happened to see people fishing, and they caught a fish and they were drawing the fish, and they pulled the fish out of the water. One thing is, the fish out of the water was jumping and flopping everywhere and trying to just get back into its element, but it couldn't because it had a hook on it. And I was just so pained. I couldn't imagine the fish being so hungry and desperate for food, and someone deceives the fish by providing it some food and hooks it on the neck, by the neck, and just drags it out of the water. And I was just thinking to myself, it's so painful. I remember that image. It was like so vivid, you know. So we, the soul, the Atman, the self, by design, we are supposed to be operating in the element of Dharma. We're supposed to be like the fish in the water. Our natural habitat is to be happy, to be loved, and to love others. And when we're not in that element, we're not going to be happy. We're going to suffocate. We're going to feel like the oxygen is taken out of us. We live in this world, but we walk around like zombies. There's no joy. I remember when I came from India to the US, it was very different because in India, a population of 1.4 billion people, wherever you go, there's people. And everyone coexists. You walk the streets, there's cows, chickens, goats, sheep, humans, you know, trucks, and everybody's sharing the road and everybody's coexisting. So I was used to that. And when I, I remember coming to the US and the population is not so dense. So what happened? I started to feel lonely, like, where's all the people? Like, what's going on here? How come there's nobody here? How can people live in this country with no connection? And there, I mean, you know, you couldn't do anything without being seen. There's so much. And they figured out that living together in communities and having these connections and having an almost an invisible support system and a visible support system both somehow exists, and everybody seems to feel happy and joyful, like everybody smile and greet each other. And my American experience was initially was shocking because you see someone and they say, "Hi, how are you?" And they just keep walking. They don't give you a chance to respond. And I was thinking, it's an interesting world. Like, they show that they really care about you so much. They ask you, they actually make an eye contact and they say, "Hi, how are you?" And the minute you catch your breath because you're so surprised with such overt affection, so you pause to answer them and they're gone. You're too slow. I was too slow. So what happens in this principle of Dharma, when we live with this principle of Dharma, we will be in this energy of Dharma where everyone is genuinely showing affection and love for one another so that you can actually be in your habitat. So this is the second point I wanted to make about how Dharma, one second, every time I am having a relationship with technology, then I didn't have a good contract with technology, so I'm still working through it. It's complicated relationship. I like it. I asked someone, how is your life going? He goes, complicated. And I said, what is that supposed to mean? He said, yeah, I've been with this girl for a while and it's complicated. And I said, what does that mean? He says, Veda, it's a long story. Just it's complicated, okay? And I said, okay, okay. So yes, so things are complicated. So the third principle why we need dharma in this world, because it is the foundation of freedom. People, at least in this world, we feel that freedom means there should be no rules. I make the rules. I can do whatever I want, and that's what freedom is. I should be able to express myself however way I want. and do whatever I want. I don't know if you have seen, I have been seeing a lot of this with a lot of young people who actually feel they can do whatever they want with their bodies, with their minds, with places, and with people, and it's freedom. It's expression of freedom. But when we understand the principle of dharma, the principle of love, giving and receiving love, actually there's rules. And it's when we operate within those rules of love, then you can actually express freedom. Freedom is not lawlessness. Freedom is actually guided by principles of dharma, which is the principle of love, sharing love and receiving love. So this principle of dharma is choosing the right rules, rules that take into consideration the mood and the need and the heart of others. And that's how you can experience and express freedom in the world. I just thought of this idea, how dharma binds us in order to liberate. Crazy thought I had, right? Dharma binds us in order to liberate. When you have a dog on a leash, does the dog have freedom? Probably more than you. It probably enjoys life more than you, because think about it. You have a dog or a pet at home. You're working 9 to 5 while the dog is sitting at home and watching TV and having a good time. Whenever the dog is sick, you take him to the vet. Or you can think of it like this. You know what a kite is? Kite? Do we fly kite in this country? Okay, I didn't know, because in India, villagers don't have much, so they fly kites, particularly in certain seasons. So, and you will notice one thing. The kite is flying free high up in the sky. And sometimes as kids, I used to remember watching kids. The kites used to be so high and almost invisible. You can't see it. But this person is controlling the movement of the kite and moving it around. And they would even have fights with the kites where they would try to, cut the ropes of the other kites with the sharpness of their strings, because they used to put some glass powder in it. Some of the mischievous kids, and I didn't know all these techniques. But the principle that I remember is, when you're bound, the kite is bound, but yet at the same time, it's completely free flying in the sky. It's because that string is there. So that means we have to have certain rules. We have to be somewhat bound in order to be free. It sounds pretty contradictory. What do you think, Balaram? Balaram is our local scholar. You want to share anything on that, Balaram? Okay. Well, yes, Henry.
It's like when you have wood, you want to cut with the grain, because when you go against it, it's a mess and it ruins the wood. It's like when you cut with the grain, you get beauty, and like, find the grain, your path.
So Henry just said, because he's an expert in chopping wood, he just said that. No, I know he is. This is science.
Thank you for letting me have a break. Chop wood.
No, I love this. This is science. Chopping wood is not so easy, because I chopped wood. As a student, we didn't have electricity. we grew up with nature. So we had these little oil lamps, and our cooking was done with wood. And so when trees went down, we had to chop this wood up, and we didn't have technology like a chainsaw or anything. It was just an axe, and you better learn how to sharpen it with some other rocks in the rivers and use that to chop wood. So it's a whole science. So you're saying, yes, chopping the wood with the grain is like dharma. Okay. And the fourth principle I want to touch on is how dharma sustains relationships and it actually sustains society. Because if we look at society, what binds us together, you will see a very common deep thread, at least older times. Nowadays, society is somewhat on a very thin string with social media and emojis and voice memos. But there was a time where society was so connected and intertwined and united, where people actually looked at each other, communicated with each other, and there was such a level of trust and respect. And if you look at society today, where we're saying that we need dharma today, the society is falling apart more and more and more. Now, I give you an example. I have a son. He lives in Florida. And I went to visit my wife and my son, and I went to visit him. I go there to visit him, and he's in the living room, which is maybe like 4 feet away from the kitchen where I was trying to make him some breakfast, trying to make him a toast. And he's on his phone, he's texting my phone. Uh, can you put some cheese on my toast? And can you please medium toast it? And I didn't get the text message because I didn't have my phone on me. He's in the living room. He doesn't tell me that. And I give him his breakfast and he looks at it. He goes, "Didn't you get my text?" And I said, "What text?" He says, "I sent you a text." And I said, "When?" He said, "I was just like 5 minutes ago." I said, "But you're sitting here." He said, "Yeah, but I text you. How come you didn't check your text?" And I said, "What did you say?" He says, "Just go look at your text." So I was like, okay. So I went into the room where I was charging my phone. I look at it, and he goes, "Can you please medium toast my my bread and put some cheese on it?" And I was just thinking, wow. I came back and I said, "You just texted me this like 5 minutes ago while I was making your breakfast?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Why didn't you just tell me?" And he says, "Well, it's easier to text, you know." And I said, very interesting way that society that we live in, the the way our relationships are held together and the values. So I feel that more now than ever before, society needs to make relationships more sustainable relationships by inculcating these principles of Dharma. You cannot express and experience love over a gadget. Because if you want things to go haywire and most misunderstood, is what you should do is use technology and text. Even when you verbally communicate in this world, people still don't understand. So, like we were discussing 2 days ago, different levels of communication. We had mentioned that there's heart communication, like intercardiac communication. The sages, they used to communicate through this method. We just communicated. Such deep love is expressed and experienced between the sages without any words. And when they met each other, it was just an explosion of spiritual emotions. There was no, they didn't even talk. Like, how are you? I love you. And all of these words that we uh, engage with one another is not something that the sages did at all, because they had deep connections with one another. And what happens as time goes by, we start to use words and get louder and scream louder because they can't hear you and they don't understand you, and you have to repeat yourself. Do you hear me? And they're right in front of your face. Has anyone been done something like that happen to you? They're like talking to you and you can hear them right in front of your face, and they still ask you, do you hear me? And I sometimes think to myself, it's so rude to ask someone such a question. Obviously, this person you love and you're living with for decades, they understand your heart. Unless our energy levels have dissipated so much that the connection, the pure connection, the pure communication is lost. And so, getting back to the real communication in all our relationships with everybody, just looking them in the eyes and sharing what's in your heart. You want to fight? Look at somebody in the eyes for 10 minutes. Hold their hands, look them in the eyes for 10 minutes, and then you decide if you want to fight. The probability of you wanting to fight is zero, because you'll be able to understand and communicate. All this nonverbal communication is the primary um, mode of communication. So everything that we express in this world, and how technology has even separated us more and more and more and more, what this does is actually does not sustain this world and is bringing this world
They
further and
call this.
further apart. So it may seem like, no, no, now I can talk to anybody in the whole world. Everything is so close, but it's not so close. Has anyone ever been at a concert with thousands of people? Have you ever been in the middle of a concert and still feel lonely, like something is missing? So this is what happens. The point that I'm making is that this world needs sustainable relationships. And because we don't communicate properly with one another, what happens is so much friction and so much misunderstanding in the world. And misunderstanding creates mishaps, and those mishaps are very, very expensive. Thousands of people, thousands of living entities lose lives because we don't communicate. So, this principle of Dharma principle that I wanted to focus on, the sustainability in relationships, it is the primary focus is communication. And that communication is a communication from the heart. And what happens when that is missing? I was just thinking of how relationships in this world, even the most sacred thing of two people uniting together, marriages and other relationships, it is not a relationship, it is a contract. And contract is for business, not for relationships. So this is what happened when there's no dharma involved in it. And if you look at politics, I don't like to talk politics, but politics it has a unique purpose in this world. But if we look at politics now, it's a game, it's a power play. Because dharma is missing. And many people now look at spirituality. And if you research why people are seeking spirituality, is because actually they're seeking escape. And that's not the reason to seek spirituality. So dharma is not finding your dharma, living from that space of dharma is not escaping dharma. It's actually being in your element and being in that that space of union, which is the fifth principle that I want to bring up. Is dharma is the bridge between you and the divine, your individual consciousness with the supreme consciousness, with your individual self to the supreme self. And that is done through the principle of dharma. Because what is that link again? It is that link that yoga means the link. It is that principle of love. It is the principle of prema. It is the most powerful glue. It can fix anything and it can hold everything together. Everything is sustained, everything is held together, and everything can be carried together. Everything will nurture with this one principle, the principle of love. And that is the relationship that we individuals are naturally supposed to have with our creators, our Father, who gave us this existence. So this is what Dharma does. It connects you to your higher purpose. Think about it. This world is fascinating. If you wake up in the morning and the sun doesn't shine and it's pitch dark, what would you feel? It would be odd. But that never happens because the sun does its dharma. The Father, the eyes of the Creator is the sun and the moon, the Vedas explain. And they never cease to glance upon us because that's what unconditional love is. And that is what dharma is. Dharma is to do the right thing even when no one is watching you. And each and every one of us, in our hearts, we know what is right and what is wrong. And to act in that space of dharma means to do the right thing. Now, I wanted to also just say that dharma is not a path. Love is not the path. Love is actually your home. That is where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be in love. That's what dharma is. You're supposed to be in that space of dharma. It is not the road, it is the direction that leads you back into that space of love within the heart. You can also look at it like that. The dharma is the center of gravity. If your center of gravity is moved, and when you stand, you're going to be a little wobbly. You won't be able to stand properly. So if you're not standing on the principle of dharma in your life, you'll notice life will be carried in one direction to another, and we will feel disturbed. Because the only thing that actually prevents one from being disturbed in this world is being situated in that element of divine union, that divine loving connection between you and others, and that is where equality comes in. Because each and every living entity is a creation of love, is an embodiment of love. And that's this body that we have is the temple that carries that love. It is simply a vessel that's holding that sacred dharma. And when we interact with one another, that should be the meditation, that should be the thought. And that should be the principle upon which we communicate. So this was my thought. And let's see, how are we doing with time? What is the time? We have 6 minutes. So I wanted to just share this final thought. Dharma is living intelligence of the soul, experienced through conscious, compassionate action that sustains the truth, harmony, and purpose in our inner and outer world. So this is what I wanted to summarize for all of you. Okay. Dharma is living intelligence of the soul, expressed through conscious, compassionate action that sustains truth, harmony, and purpose in the inner world and the outer world. So, thank you all for your patience, all of you online and everyone here. We have 6 minutes. Anybody wants to share any reflections and thoughts? Anybody here want to share anything? John, would you like to share something?
This Jen?
Yes.
Well, I had one thought as we were talking about how freedom is not everybody's way. It's not, it needs to be guided by, in this case, love. And I was thinking, it's been used, chains of freedom over the years, mostly by authoritarians who thought that the U.S. was too free to be ruled. And I think their comment would have been, it's complicated.
Okay. Thank you, John. Anyone else wants to share anything? Balaram, you have any thoughts?
Just thinking of that kite example. If you, the kite wants to go higher and the string is keeping it down. You cut the string. And for a moment you go higher, you fly around, but then you crash.
Yes. 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 I used to do that. I used to try to do that, but I used to watch the older kids. They used to find broken pieces of glass and they would mix it with rice. I don't know how these people, we didn't learn chemistry, none of those kind of stuff. But they just look at this thing. Glass is sharp, rice is sticky. So you mix the two together, you make it sharp and sticky. And you put it on the thread and it becomes sharp. So they would fly these kites and cut the threads of the other kites. And nobody knew because the threads are invisible, Yes, so when the kite flies, what Balaram was saying, that when you cut the thread of the kite may go fly higher, but then it'll drop because it's not connected. There is no, there isn't a pivot. There isn't, how do they call this thing where they hold the thread?
Spool.
Spool? Spool. Oh, I learned a new word today.
And that's also on the fishing rod.
Okay, spool. Okay, cool. So everybody learn a new word. The word is called spool. It's where they roll the string. Okay, anyway, any other thoughts? Yes, Henry.
I find that it's from that following Dharma, then the experience of happiness, pleasure, joy is diminished in comparison to why we're following Dharma.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else wants to share anything? Okay.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Sorry, I
Lakshmi.
joined. Hare Krishna. Sorry, I joined too late, but I just wanted to thank you for the point that you say about the technology and the texting. I think with the technology that is coming, it really do put a lot of hardship on family and communication. Often people rather to stay home and just texting rather than to go out for a little walk or anything, you know. I want to think that is very important that we have the sangha and communicating with people and share hearts. It's very important, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Yeah, technology sounds great, what they're doing and how they're bringing people together. I mean, it's such a good sale pitch, isn't it? It's such a good sale pitch. And we think, and we are actually made to believe that it really is helpful. And we'll defend it. So they have done a really, really good job with our sensory faculties, convincing us through our sight. The designs are like incredible, and how they convince us, and how it feels to touch. I think it's incredible how they use the sensory faculties, and then we're trapped like the fish, you know. We want love, but then it's a hook, you know. You're so addicted, and it's painful sometimes to get over those. People think that alcoholic addiction is like the worst thing. And unfortunately, they will disagree with you. And, you know, the addictions of technology is as bad, if not worse. And at least alcohol, you have to be 21 to drink. Technology is thrown in your face the minute you open your eyes. The kid is crying, let's give them a phone and start watching little cartoons. I was quite appalled, actually, and there's no regulations for it. Yes, Henry.
And some people have artificial intelligent girlfriends or boyfriends.
Yeah, sure. We're seeking such.
Competition is increasing.
Yes, yes. So thank you all so much, all of you beautiful souls all over the world. It's so nice to be with all of you. Nita, you want to give everyone a little haribol or something? I did that already. Ready, everybody say haribol together. Haribol!
Haribo.
Haribo!
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 Haribo.
Haribo!
Haribo.
Haribo!
Haribo!